Hey traders, this is Christian from Tribeca Trade Group, and it is Thursday, the 19th, December 19th. We've got just 6 days till Christmas, and this is your end of day video. So, what do we have today? Basically, after 2 days of chop, nice little trending day today. The Qs were the outperformer today, almost up, quietly up like 60 basis points. So, a pretty decent move there. That was followed by, SPY up 40 basis points for the day. IWM also right there too. So, I think this was a nice day after a couple days of chop. Even though there was 2 days of chop the last couple days, it was really constructive trading. There's a lot of things that we caught in the trading room, for nice scalping trades, a couple swing trades as well. So, all together, now that we've got one more day of the week, which tomorrow is quadruple witching, I think a pretty decent end to the week. And I don't think I don't know what we're going to get tomorrow with quadruple witching. Remember what happens? I'll walk you through this really quickly, but I think that sometimes you do see a little bit of volatility, especially around the open and around the close. I don't typically, unless I really have an edge and have an advantage and I know what's going on, I don't really do that much trading on quadruple witching because, the professionals really have the information in terms of what names are going to move a lot for index rebalances and so forth. I don't have that information any longer. It costs money to see to get the files from the S&P to know what names are moving, what names are being reweighted down, what are being reweighted up. That you do have to pay for that information from the S&P. It's not that much. It's not that expensive, but you do have to pay for it. So let's just talk about that really quickly because I do get from time to time some questions on that. So first things first, the S&P and so Spider, I shouldn't say the S&P, but SPY and all of the State Street ETFs, so all the Spider ETFs, they all go ex-dividend tomorrow. So if you're noticing why these things are down, like I saw questions the other day on EEM. Why is EEM down so much? Well, because it paid out a big dividend. So there'll be about $1.50 dividend for SPY tomorrow. So, if you're on your Peloton tomorrow in the morning and watching the ticker scroll by in the morning and you see SPY down $1.50, and you're searching for news, you're not going to find any. Usually that does happen on CNBC on their ticker. It doesn't get fixed until the open generally. So anyway, that's just one thing for tomorrow. But all of the so I'll take you through the quadruple witching maybe in 1 minute, hopefully. On the open, all of futures, December futures. Most people roll those a week ahead of time, but there are Delta One desks, which is where I used to work on for a long time. One of the functions is they do a lot of trading on that day, and they're arbing the difference between where the futures price goes out versus the underlying basket. So as those futures expire, what happens is it expires on the open, and they get what's called the special quotation price. You may hear SQ, right? So that's based on where like all the underlying names in the S&P 500, where they all open at, right? And there's a whole calculation involved. Gets foot back to you have to use a divisor, and you foot back to a price. But all of those, so baskets will be placed down on the open, what's called market on open price. And so all that volume will go away. 80-90% of it will hit on the open, and some people will do some arbing in the first 5 minutes after the open. But you will see some ginormous prints. You'll be like, hey, what's this big print in Apple on the open? Well, it's because it's related to December futures expiration, right? So that's the open. A couple other things like one of the which is single stock futures, which people don't really trade those anymore. You also have, of course, December options expiration, and then of course all the index rebalancing, which people also don't talk about too much because I don't think they really understand it too much. But all of that happens on the close, so you will see a lot of volume on the close of the day too. Keep in mind, so the takeaways from this, unless you really have, you know what has to be bought or sold, there's not really too much for a retail trader to do, because again, the institutions are trading millions of dollars, and 20, 30 basis points move is a big deal for them, in individual names. So they're going to be, they have those trades on. They usually start gaming those trades, that index rebalance, about a week or two beforehand, and then they do a lot of their trading this week. What's called pre-positioning for that. So sorry, that was a little bit longer than a minute, but that's basically to do what's to do. I think also, when you're analyzing charts this weekend, every stock will have big volume. So I know some people, again, they'll go through the charts and like, wow, look at the volume on this move. Well, a lot of it is just due to one-time index rebalancing. So I wouldn't get too caught up in the volume and analyzing volumes on a candlestick chart and so forth. So that's that. So it's, there may be some things that really move, that really trend for the day. I think we've certainly seen that this week. I think a lot of the under-owned names caught a nice bid. And then we'll also see that there's a trade. I'll discuss that probably in the member video this weekend, Tribeca Trade Group member video, talking about kind of that end of year trade where some of the bottom of the barrel stocks continue to rally for the last week and then so on. So certainly there's some names that I talked about, like Macy's, it comes to mind. Shake Shack is another one. I think that did pretty well today. And I think some of that has to do with that. All right, so I mentioned the indices strong performance today. Uh, the energy names continue. I've seen the energy names on the leaderboard, on the top of the leaderboard now for like just about every day this week. So they continue. I continue to talk a little bit about them. They've been trending since they hit that low, this XOP ETF of 1990. It's been a lot of green candles in a row. I was actually looking for something this morning to put on in this space. I didn't do it. I stuck with EPD, which had a nice reversal from the lows. I almost added to the position, and again, I keep kind of looking for something else to put on in the space, but that's okay. Don't need to have everything on. REITs did pretty well today. FANG stocks did well today. Facebook, Netflix. Let's look at these charts. Facebook has had a really nice week, broken a value and is close to breaking out. Big call activity in the morning yesterday. A lot of traders in the room did very well with scalping some Facebook in the morning, but it was like bang 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 call activity in the morning. Netflix is another name. I mean, really huge day. Couple of days for Netflix. There was some big calls that have gone up about a week ago, so they worked. I tell you the truth, I really didn't participate in this name. We talked about the other thing is, where this thing reversed. Look at the VPOC taken out. So there was another one taken out here, but look at this taken out. I talked about this and how, somebody asked me about 2 weeks ago, what do you think about Netflix? And I said it looked bearish. And I said that there was a VPOC down here. So since that, sometimes we see these. I was just looking at the XOP chart, but look at the reversal after taking this out. Really strong momentum to it. Just leapt right over that one. Impressive move. What else did okay? Solar stocks continuing to do okay. I talked about them earlier in the week. I'm still the position I have on is I'm long this solar ETF. It's been working well. It did take out that version point of control and is higher. So I've been long this thing for a while now, but it's almost back to the high. So it did take a decent dip. Hindsight, I wish I would have re-added to it here, but that's okay. Hindsight 2020. Yeah, and so a few different groups performed pretty well. On the downside, I'm really shocked that the home builder is breaking down. There was a big trade that we talked about that went up like about $100 million trade that went up the other day where they sold at the end of Tuesday. That trade is, I can bring that up for you so that you can see what I'm talking about. But it's kind of a mystery to me. So that's every trade that I have on, not every one has worked. This one has not, and sometimes that happens. So let's go to a couple days ago, and you can see this monster of a print right at the end of the day that went up. So somebody sold. This is 2.2 million shares. So really decent size order. Again, that's almost $100 million in notional, but someone caught this thing pretty well. That was the day that the positive housing numbers came out too. So kind of ended up being a sell the news type event. So we'll see. It did break value. It could get back into value in one day. Notice that there's some support here as well. I have not added to this trade yet. I still have time. It's a January trade, but I want to see this thing stop selling off for now. And a number of names in this group have gotten downgrades too. But again, I like to talk about not just the winning trades, but some of the ones that didn't work out too, because it is what it is. It's this is this is not all winners, and I don't just tweet out or just discuss all winners, right? We've had a number of those, and I can certainly give the old pat on the back, but just to be realistic, not every trade that you put on, even though the market is rising, is going to work perfectly. So again, just to be realistic, I also talked about metals and mining yesterday. They sold off today, down 1.2%. So maybe a chance to kind of get back in some of these names. I talked about Vale in yesterday's video. I did not do anything with that name. So let me start going over some option activity because it will kind of go into this name. MOS. So a lot of calls today. Not a lot of movement in the stock. I did go long this name. I think it's a nice way to play. It's a nice way to play if you think that the Chinese are going to start buying agriculture products. I think that's right in the wheelhouse of this. The name isn't a downtrend. I mentioned when I put the trade on that I don't love the chart. It's got some resistance to get through. But again, a lot of these March. How many did they end up trading? I feel like they traded them throughout the day. Let's see. Yeah, 14,000 of those calls. So let's just open this up a little bit more. Trade Alert will give us some data. But 43 looks like 43% fell on the ask there. And the IV change was up, which tells me that they were most likely bought. So again, they were going out to March. You got to kind of think about that. And sometimes if you're looking for like a move in 1 or 2 days, if they're going out to March, probably they're looking for something a little bit further. But I like the kind of thought process here that if China is going to follow through and purchase some things, the agriculture group should benefit from it. All right, just being logical with that. All right, so that was one, and then we saw some airlines. Uh, Spirit Airlines had a nice move today. Probably better. Something that a lot of people don't talk about, and I'm happy to just spend a minute on this. When they buy, so they bought 45 strike calls for about what I think 30, 35, 40 cents, somewhere in there. That's a big move. Now you could buy the stock. You could use the option activity and just buy the stock. If you would have bought the stock where they bought it, you would have had a nice day in P&L. Probably a little bit more than buying those out of the money calls, because the delta is very low. Meaning you're going to really need, even though the stock was up 2%, maybe those calls appreciated by about 10 cents, which is still 10 cents is a good percentage change. If you bought them around 35, 35 cents goes to 45, 50 cents. That's a nice gain percentage wise. But you can also buy the stock. It's not a very expensive stock if you think you're going to get a sustained move, and you don't have to worry about the time decay and so forth. And if the stock happens to sell off one day and then go up, it makes it harder for the calls to work because they're so far out of the money. All right, so just something to think about. UAL was another name that saw call activity today too. So a couple of the airlines. I think the UAL actually was a bigger bet. This one, so big trade in Arista Networks. It is in the earnings gap. This is just a tough looking chart. But I mentioned this on Twitter the other day that perhaps with phase one of this trade deal being complete, some of these more bigger hardware names in tech, like Cisco, I looked at Cisco too on Monday, and son of a gun, I didn't take it. And look at what Cisco did. So I looked at it, and I thought, hey, this would be a nice way to kind of play a beaten up name that has mentioned trade uncertainty. So Arista Networks is there. That's a nice play. Again, it has to be something for you, every one of these trades, of course. And I'm not giving advice. I'm not telling you what to do. It has to kind of fit your, here's our risk disclaimer. But it really has to fit what you're looking and what you think is going to do, because they're going all the way out to June, right? So this is a trade that when they go out to June, right, you're probably going to have to if you just think about this for a minute, it's a longer term trade, so you're going to have to stick with the trade through thin and thin, because a lot of times the stock doesn't just go up straight after somebody buys 6 month calls, but it could take a little while for this thing to recover. So you're going to need to have that conviction to say, hey, I really like this name. I think it's a good place to buy it. I didn't do anything with that name, although I think it's an interesting order. Here again, it's a $1 million order that went up midday. Basically, just a little bit out of the money, going all the way out to June. So somebody has some conviction with that. Decent chunk of change. Roku. I gave this example on Twitter this morning. We were watching Roku because we saw Roku calls being bought aggressively a couple times today, but it's got some resistance to go through. So if you caught it really quickly, there were some small calls and then bigger calls went up like right around the high of the day. Very close to the high of the day is where the calls went up. So you could have used it for like a really quick scalp. But if you didn't, then you kind of have to think, and that's why I use the market webs, and you kind of map it out a little bit, and you can see this resistance at 139.76, and that repeats. If we go to the 5 minute, now if it could get just a little bit further higher, there's a virgin point of control, I believe, up here, all the way up here at 146.46, but it needs to notice that it stopped right around the same level as the 1 hour. It hit resistance. So again, these are our Venom pivot lines, and they're really working well. So sometimes, even if you see the aggressive call activity and you kind of map it out and you say, okay, well, it's got to get through some decent resistance. I'm also on the daily chart as well. And if you could avoid a loser, because Roku calls are not cheap, right? Unless you're trading Roku stock, which of course you could do. But if you go into Roku calls and the stock doesn't move, there's a big cost for Roku calls. So if you could avoid, taking some of the names that you see aggressive call action on. Now, who knows? Maybe this one opens up higher and gets over the resistance. But for the day, it didn't work. But it could. Who knows? Maybe there's a positive analyst rating out. I'll try to just skip ahead a little bit because there is a lot of option activity today. THO, which we've seen a couple times now, this stock, right? If you look at it and you're like, oh, geez, well, it's probably blown out to the upside a little bit too much. Zoom out a little bit. This thing was once a $155 stock. It's still, even though it's rallied from the lows, is about half the price. And $81 could be something where the stock gets to. It does have another area of resistance up here at 76, but I like this. I like the setup in THO. I know we've had a couple traders in the room do very well on this name. AMD saw a little bit more calls today. I don't think it really pushed the name too much. Skyworks, Twitter for I think the second day in a row. Peloton, SE. I wanted to cover this one chart. Finally, this thing broke out. Right? So a lot of consolidation here. It's tried a couple times. Maybe this thing is ready for this next leg. It's also trying to fire off. It's close, not yet, with an MACD crossover. So I think this thing could be ready to finally move. back and resume this move. Remember, this whole big move up that SE saw was on earnings, and then it's been in consolidation mode. So I think this is a really nice setup. I would not be afraid personally to get long on the breakout because it's been moving sideways for a while. A couple other names that we traded today. We talked about TTD in the room. Notice that this one again, market webs giving you a sense of where to take the profits. We traded this right up. I actually sold this a little bit before it hit the VPOC. I was happy with it because it was doing a little consolidation, but I think I sold it right in here, which is perfect. I got long right on the first 5 minute bar in this one, so this worked really well. Yeah, right at 935, and took a target at 550, out at 640, and it's a nice half-hour trade. What else did I mentioned MOS. We did what's called a limited risk reversal in Twilio. Kind of like this chart at this point. Right? I think I could see a move back to rally up to top of value, which is about 105. So limited risk reversal. We go over these things in the trading room. So I'm not going to expand upon it now, but it's a way where you can kind of sell some premium too in a trade. All right, and I think we'll leave it there for the day. But again, uh, overall market thought I think for now is we're continuing to grind higher. We're basically again kind of pushing back to overbought levels. I think the complacency is building. The VIX is down to a 1250. We are seeing a little bit of hedging. Been seeing a little bit of VIX calls. We're also seeing some gold plays. Maybe that's the last chart to kind of leave with. Gold is trying here. It tried again today. Couldn't exactly turn the corner. But I think the more this thing tries, I think it could see a nice little break. And we are seeing some positioning. There was some calls in GDXJ. Tough to see if these are 100% certain that these are bought. Because it does go ex-dividend too. But there are 3,000 of those Feb calls. Also, Nugget saw some action today too. So again, something a little bit uncorrelated to the market might suit you. Not that I want to play Nugget in calls, but something along the lines of gold, ABX. Sorry, what's the name of the stock? Used to be the old symbol was ABX. Barrick Gold, as well as GDX and GDXJ don't look bad. They're kind of hanging out, but who knows? Maybe a couple days they'll get some momentum to it. All right, guys. So that's it for tonight's video. Have a great night, everybody, and see you tomorrow for quadruple witching bright and early. Again, if I try to say this a few times a week, but if you're not a member of Tribeca Trade Group, we go over all the setups, all the charts in the pre-market session. So if you're into that type of thing where you like to really get ready for the trading day and you want somebody to go over, some setups and get you ready for the day, we do that. We do that every day pre-market, and we'll be going over quad witching stuff tomorrow. Have a great night, everybody, and see you tomorrow.